So, Happy New Year, people. This video has absolutely nothing to do with the new year, apart from the fact that it's happening at the start of the new year. What I'm about to do is probably make an enemy of everyone on my course, so I'm going to put my glasses on and hope that they don't recognise me. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to review all of the shows that we saw for the past term and hopefully come to some form of conclusion. I should really stop making videos before I've planned an ending, really, but that would require some form of perspective thinking. There we go. So I'm going to turn you off. So, what have we got? We started off with, the very first thing we saw was Dead Dog in a Suitcase by Knee High Theatre, which is probably the best piece of stage theatre that I've ever seen in my life. It was phenomenal. It had everything. It had music, it had actors who were acting, which is a quality that I shouldn't have to apply to a piece of theatre, but yeah, it was amazing. I loved it. It was epic. It had plots and subplots, and it wasn't boring at any point. It was great. Moving swiftly on to the next piece of theatre that we saw, which was, I believe, either the piece was called Rest of Winter, or it was a company called Rest of Winter. I can't remember a lot about it. Which was from postgraduates of Falmouth University. And it was just awful. It was... Even retrospectively thinking about it, I still can't think of a good thing about it. It seemed like theatre that was intended for students of theatre, which, for one, is something that I'm really against, because I sort of think that theatre should be for entertainment purposes and for the masses, so I don't really get the point of making theatre just for people who study theatre. It's why people perceive acting students and theatre students as wankers, which is something that I also want to avoid. Some points have been made, like, to support Rest of Winter, but I can't think of any good thing about it. The only reason I can think for that piece being made would be to specifically bore people or piss people off, in which case I dislike them even more. If it was to piss people off, fine, it didn't really do that, so you failed. I've got to stop fiddling with stuff. If it was to bore people, then that actually makes me angry, because boredom is the only emotion that you can provoke from people that doesn't actually do anything. If you do it to make people angry, it makes them think about things. If you do it to make them bored, it's nothing. It's the most apathetic thing that you can make someone do. And surely, if your purpose for theatre is not just to entertain, then the other purpose is to make them think or make them question. And this didn't do it. The only question we raised is, why did we just spend 15 minutes watching someone put on gloves and a helmet in slow motion? Before I blow a gasket, I want to move on to the Belarus Free Theatre Show, who performed The Price of Money, which was okay. Obviously, I don't think that we can... What's the word I'm looking for? I don't think it's as poignant to us as it would be to people living in Belarus or people living in impoverished or totalitarian countries. Problem with the performance is that, one, a lot of it was spoken, surprisingly, in Russian. So we had to look between the performance and then up to the board where they had the subtitles, so we missed a lot of the action. And also, a lot of it was at one level. It was all shouting and monotonous in the... just as you'd expect shouting and monotonous to be. It was one tone. It was just a really high tone for the entire thing. So the level and the energy was always at one point. There was no fluctuation. So it was, in that respect, a bit dull. And also, I didn't discover this until I'd read Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, that the first 6 pages of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Were Dead was the start of the show. They just ripped it from that. And some bits seemed similar. So I'm slightly worried that the entire performance was taken from other plays, and like a mashup of other plays, which I suppose it's all right, but it seems like a bit of a cop out when you're charging people for it and you're just stealing parts from other people's shows. Or maybe that was the point. It's called The Price of Money, so I don't know. Maybe there was a political message in there somewhere. Not that I would have got it, because a lot of the time it was in Russian, and I don't understand the plight of the Belarusian people just through ignorance, just because I don't really know the situation there. I can't remember what the next show I saw was, so bear with. I have to look at the tickets. What was that one? Oh, they don't. I know what you just say. There's probably a couple more performances, but I can't remember them. The next one that I have was Hoax Bluff by Action Hero. And at this point, the analytical nature of the course had worn me down so much that I just wanted to see a performance that was entertaining. And Hoax Bluff was perfect for that. It wasn't particularly political, or, it was kind of a comment on, like, the 80s American social aspect of sport, because it was essentially a piss take of American 80s sport films, and it was a collaboration of lots of sports, like comments from lots of sports and stuff, and it was actually really well done. The way they mashed the sports together was quite entertaining, and a lot of the times funny, and it was just a piece of theatre I could sit down and watch, and the only reason I would watch it was because it was entertaining. It wasn't making me think. Well, it made me think a little bit, but that wasn't the point. The point wasn't to make me question life or question how we deal with American 80s sports films. It was just entertaining. So as far as that is, it was the perfect show, because it was exactly what I needed at that point, just so this course didn't make me blow my own brains out. Speaking of which, the last two performances were by a company called Pidge, who were also, I believe, postgraduates from this course. And it was a storytelling theatre. And the main problem with the first one is that they liked pauses. Not like Pinter style liked pauses. They liked pauses in the sense that instead of doing what pausing should do, which is punctuate, they perforated the performance. There was more silence in a storytelling show than actual words. And that was the one thing that they wanted to keep in. All I was thinking throughout that performance was this would be perfect if they would actually tell the story, because all the pauses are doing is making me bored and forget the point of the... I can't remember any of the stories. There was at one point, there was a person who was made out of cotton in a tribe of metal people. And I can't remember how that story ends, because they just pause and stop for like 20 seconds, and then all you're thinking is, why are they pausing? And then you can't remember the story. It defied the point. And the only thing I would have done to change that performance was lessen the pauses, because other than that, it would have been brilliant. But that was the one thing that they really wanted to keep in, which was a shame. Then their second performance, I don't know what either of these were called, was an unfinished one, and it was more of a social commentary on like flooding and water issues that we've had in England. And it was unfinished, and it was funny. It was great. It didn't have the pausing problem. It was entertaining. It was interesting to like hear. It doesn't sound interesting when you talk about it, saying it was a play about flooding and waterworks in like the southwest of England, but they did it in a way that made it interesting, made it funny, and it was like factually supported by people who are actually working in the industry and how they are disproportionately represented in the media, which is, a good thing, because media are cunts. Yeah, it was a good performance. It was unfinished, so I'd quite like to see how it ended up. But other than that, it was all right. It was just a shame that the first one we saw was a little bit ruined by the one thing that they wanted to keep in. It was an exaggeration of pausing. There was just too much silence in it. I could understand wanting to pause for effect, which was amplified by the fact that one of the acting shows that I think it was the second year acting show, they did an abridged version of The Birthday Party by Harold Pinter, who is, Pinter. He's brilliant, and he loves pauses. And it was a really good show. It still made sense, despite the fact that they had to cut about half an hour, 45 minutes worth of stuff out of it. It was really well done. And unfortunately, that was one of the few shows that I'd actually been able to see. So, what can I say from this? I think I'm worried that the course is starting to make me overanalyse and dislike theatre in general, which is something that you wouldn't expect from an avant-garde theatre course like this one. Because the thing that really upset me about... I forgot what they were fucking called. Rest of Winter, or whatever the performances were called. It's the only performance I've ever considered walking out of. I've been bored in shows before, but that one is the only one I've ever thought, this is a complete waste of my time. I would rather be sitting around doing nothing than being forced to watch this. And I've never had that in any other performance I've ever seen. And like watching Hoax Bluff, I really enjoyed it. But thinking about it retrospectively, with a lot of the Falmouth theatre students, I've tried to ignore what they've said, because they're making good points, but they're all negative. I watched Hobbit, the last Hobbit film, The Battle of Five Armies, and yeah, there were some really bad bits and unnecessary bits in it, but it was still an overall good film. But the fact that the name of our university is becoming an adjective for ruining something. I was reading a conversation about the film, and people just saying, yeah, some bits were bad, but it was a good film. And then other people just saying, no, the bad bits ruined it for me. And then somebody said, can we just accept that it was an enjoyable film? Let's not Falmouth it. And that's rather upsetting as well. Again, I've got to the point where I'm going to end the video at some point, but I don't know how I'm going to end it. And I probably can't do a retrospective look on the performances at the end of this term, because a lot of the shows that we've got are all dance shows that I'm not going to go see. Because I'm on a theatre course. Watching a dance performance may be enjoyable, but it's not going to help me in any way. Ugh. And it's also worrying that two of the shows that I really didn't like, well, three, because the rest of Winter People did two, surprisingly. It just merged into one sort of blob of feces. I'm calm. I can't remember the point I was going to make. It's worrying that those two are postgraduate performances, because it makes us think, is this what they expect from us? And we've been assured that it isn't, but it's still worrying that people can come from a course that, as far as I'm concerned, is brilliant. I'm not agreeing with a lot of the subjects that we cover, because it's a lot of very experimental, abstract and avant-garde stuff, but I'm still looking at it going, that's interesting. I'm not going to do it, it's interesting. And I can't see any of the things that we've learnt so far in any of these performances. So, and these are the only two we've seen. There must be some students who've come out who, like, the second Pidge performance was good, but that's 1 out of 4. I know it's a difficult field to get involved in and to definitely get paid in, but surely there's got to be some who are doing better than that piece of shit. Ugh. Happy New Year.